everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Anna, and today I'm going to invite you into my home as I create sourdough loaves in preparation for Valentine's Day using beetroot powder as a natural dye. So if you're like me and you're trying to stay away from all the crazy chemicals in the grocery stores, then please stay tuned as I use this beetroot powder to do just that. Also, if you're interested in the recipe I'm using today, you can simply screenshot the recipe here or go back to my first video ever on YouTube and you can see how I do just that without beetroot powder or any inclusions, just a simple, no knead artisan sourdough loaf recipe. So today I'm just going to trial two different methods. The first, I'm going to add the beetroot powder later during the stretch and folds, and the second, I'm going to add the beetroot powder immediately. So to get started, I'm going to take my sourdough starter out of the fridge and feed it. So I like to measure my sourdough starter when I'm feeding it, so here I'm just placing it on the scale, and I already know my container weighs 1,091 grams, so I'm just subtracting that to find out that I have 194 grams of starter. So then I'm going to follow a 1:2 ratio, meaning 1 part sourdough starter, 2 parts unbleached all-purpose flour, and 2 parts room temperature filtered water. You can totally eyeball it here. You're just looking for a pancake batter consistency. If you use the eyeball method, it is totally up to you. But then you're just going to cover it, mark it where it started, and wait till it doubles in size, which can be about 6 to 8 hours, as you can see here. So it is nice and bubbly and ready to use. So now I'm ready to start. I'm putting my bowl on my scale, adding 500 grams of unbleached all-purpose flour, 200 grams of whole wheat flour, followed by 250 grams of bread flour. Once I've added all my types of flour, I'm going to add 650 grams of filtered room temperature water. So once you've added all the flour and water, you're just going to mix it together with your hands or with a wooden spoon until you've incorporated all the ingredients together. So once it looks about like this, you're just going to cover it with a tea towel and let it sit on your counter for 30 minutes to autolyze, which is just a fancy word meaning that it all absorbs together. So now, like I said, I'm trialing two different methods today. So with this, I cut my recipe in half and I'm going to add the beetroot powder from the beginning just to see what happens. So when I went to add the beetroot powder, I'm not really following any specific recipe. I was just eyeballing to see how much beetroot powder made how many grams, and I realized it took a lot more beetroot powder than I thought to even get to a gram. So I added about 2 tablespoons to 2.5 tablespoons to get to 1 gram, and then I just incorporated the ingredients like I said before. So you can see the dough's already getting pretty pink. I definitely thought this one was a lot more fun by adding the beetroot powder in the beginning, but you know, we're seeing what happens. Alright, so now that my dough has autolyzed for about 30 minutes, it's time to add the sourdough starter. So for this big recipe that's going to create 2 loaves, I'm going to add 200 grams of active sourdough starter. So you'll see me do that here, followed by 20 grams of salt. And just mix that together. You're not really kneading the dough. Once again, you're just trying to incorporate all the ingredients together. Cover it with a tea towel, let it sit for 30 minutes. Like I said, I'm making 2 loaves here with different methods, so this is the recipe I cut in half, so I'm only adding 100 grams of sourdough starter and 10 grams of salt. And once again, incorporating that dough together to then let it sit on the counter for 30 more minutes. So I just got done adding the sourdough starter and salt to the dough. So I just want to take a minute to show you the beetroot powder that I was using earlier. So if you can see that, I got this from Amazon. It was originally $20 and I got it half off for $9.99, which is why I kind of decided let's go ahead and try this, and it's also good for you. So it says that beetroot powder is an excellent source of antioxidants, vitamins, and iron, and it says the ingredients are 100% organic beetroot powder. So if you're interested, I will try to remember to leave a link in the description for those of you who are interested, but it is from Kate Naturals Organic Beetroot Powder. So there you go. Alright, now that the sourdough has been sitting on my counter for 30 minutes, I'm going to start the first set of stretch and folds. So you can kind of see my technique here. You just want to stretch the dough as high as you can before folding it over and then rotating the bowl. And you want to do this maybe about 4 to 5 times, or if you're having fun, do it more, but at least about 4 times before covering with a tea towel and doing it again in the next 30 minutes. So once again, I have 2 sets of dough that I'm working with today. So I'm going to do the first set of stretch and folds on the beetroot powder dough here using the same technique. And it's also going to sit 30 minutes. Alright, so this was after the first set of stretch and folds and waiting 30 minutes. So I'm just going to repeat the process. So this is stretch and fold number 2. Again, you want to do it about 4 times, rotating the bowl between each set. Cover with a tea towel, let it sit 30 more minutes. This is the second set of stretch and folds on my beetroot dough. So I read online that it's good to add your inclusions at the third stretch and fold. So here I am just kind of laminating the dough, spreading it out, and adding the beetroot powder inside. Once again, totally eyeballing this. I did not weigh it out in grams. I just guessed at how much I should put in. It kind of looked like I was making cinnamon rolls, and then I just envelope folded it to kind of put it all inside. And then I just placed it back in the bowl to cover it. So I didn't really stretch and fold here, I just added the inclusions. But now I am going to do a third set of stretch and folds on the beetroot dough. So now it's the fourth stretch and fold. So I added the ingredients at the third stretch, and now I am actually stretching and folding my original sourdough. You can kind of see the beetroot powder starting to poke out. It was getting really hard to manipulate, so that's why I started using my hand to hold it down and covering it with a tea towel. Alright, so now we're at the fifth stretch and fold. Once again, you're just going to cover it with a tea towel, and I actually decided not to do any more stretch and folds to the beetroot dough, so here it is. And now it's time for the sixth and final stretch and fold. I forgot to mention earlier that you can do these 15 to 30 minutes apart, but today I just chose to do 30 minutes apart. Once again, you're just going to cover it and let it sit for 30 minutes. Here's some progress on the beetroot dough. Alright, so now that I did 6 stretch and folds, I'm just flouring my surface and removing the original set of dough from the bowl because I'm going to split it into 2 loaves. Like I said in the very beginning, this recipe is big because it makes 2 loaves. So you're just going to do a series of push and pulls here to kind of get it that initial shape. So I'm just going to repeat the process. Beetroot dough, so you can kind of see the difference. It's much more pink. The other dough did kind of turn a little bit more pink than I expected on the outside, but you can definitely tell a difference between the two. So now I'm going to flip it after they've sat on the counter for 30 minutes, and I'm going to envelope fold and then just kind of roll it into itself with a few more push and pulls to create some tension on the surface. Again, envelope folding before rolling into itself, followed by push and pulls to create tension. and then I'm just going to repeat that process on that third and final loaf. But while I do that, I also wanted to mention something. You see in the middle that I just have a plain basket and I'm putting a tea towel inside. I know sourdough can seem so daunting and that there are so many supplies that you have to buy, but just remember to use what you have. I didn't have enough Valentine baskets, so I just got an old basket, lined it with a tea towel, sifted flour inside, and plopped the dough right on inside. And now I'm just making a seam on the dough so that it stays together better. And another tip I discovered recently is that I bought some shower caps off Amazon, and I discovered that it's a really sustainable and great way to cover the sourdough for the fridge ferment, because I just reuse these. I just let the water evaporate before I store them and then pull them out again to reuse. So now I'm just going to place my sourdough loaves in the fridge for the cold ferment. This will be about 12 to 14 hours. So Ellie just wanted to say a quick hello and a good night, because it is currently 10:45 and we are off to bed. But we will see you in about 12 hours to start the actual baking process. So it has been about 12 hours, so I'm just preheating my oven to 475, and I'm going to place the Dutch oven inside to preheat as well. And then I'm going to grab my first loaf out of the fridge to begin the scoring process. If you watched my last thrift with me video, I bought this doily with the full intent to make beautiful designs using it. Didn't really work this time, so I just made a blank canvas, totally fine. It's all about experimenting today, and I'm going to score a design. I totally made this up on the fly, and it actually kind of worked. So since this is a Valentine's themed video, I decided to score a heart, which actually turned out pretty good. And then I just added a few little extra designs as well. So here's a final look at the design before I stick it in the oven covered at 475 for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to uncover it, drop the temp to 450, and bake it 25 more minutes. Here's the final look, super proud. And now I'm grabbing the loaf that had the beetroot powder from the beginning. I'm going to retry the doily and see what happens. So I did see a tip on Instagram after I made this video, but I saw that people will use a brush to wipe off all the excess flour and kind of even it out, and that helps the design stay better, so I might try that next time. But I was really proud with how it worked this time. And once again, I'm just kind of making up the scoring pattern based on how the design transferred, and I'm just going to kind of see what happens. This video is all about experimenting and having fun. So here is the final product. It looked so good. I was really happy with this one, and I love the color. Alright, so last one. This is going to be another one of the original sourdoughs that I added the beetroot powder towards the end. So I'm just going to kind of redo the heart pattern with a little bit different take on it and just see what happens. So while my last loaf is baking, I just wanted to take a second to tell you about the tools that I was using today. So in my last video, or my first video I should say, you probably saw me use this bread lame. So it just looks like this. The blade is a little angled, which I really didn't like, and you just hold it so far away from the surface that you're scoring. This works just fine if this is all you have, or if this is what you've been seeing, and it did work for me too. I just didn't prefer it. So my husband has a 3D printer, and he actually designed me this one. So this is just called a bread lame, so is the other one. He put my YouTube name on here, you can't really see it, but you open it up and pop the razor blade in, and you can adjust how far out it pokes. And I just like this a lot better because you can hold the blade a little bit closer and have more control. So that's what I was using. You can look them up on Amazon as well and just find the one that you prefer. There's all kinds. And then I was also, if you watched my last thrifting video, you would have seen a little lace doily that I picked up. I washed this and then placed it over the loaf and just experimented with sifting some flour over the top to see if the design would transfer, and it did a pretty good job. I still would want to get better at it, but I thought it was a pretty way to add some design to the top. Here's how that final loaf turned out, but now I want to cut into two of the loaves so that you can kind of see how the beetroot powder altered them. So with the first one, when I added it in the stretch and folds, it did give it a slight swirl pattern, but the one where I added it from the beginning, the color turned out so beautifully, and I'm really happy with this one. Now I must say it has a very subtle earthy taste, but nothing that really bothers me too much. But anyways, that is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, comment, subscribe, and add me on Instagram, and I hope to see you in future videos.